If you became a team lead because you were great at your job, you've probably already felt the shift. The skills that made you reliable as an individual contributor don't automatically make you great as a leader. They don't automatically make you great at building trust with a new team. Now you're not just responsible for what you do, you're responsible for the success of your team, for giving feedback, setting expectations, handling conflicts, and making sure you all accomplish the mission together. If you keep leading like your job is just to be the top contributor on the team, you're going to end up frustrated, overwhelmed, and carrying other people's work because you're not managing them properly. We're going to break down the skills you need to create clarity, build trust, and help your team succeed without you trying to do it all. In the Marine Corps, when I was promoted to staff sergeant, this is sort of the next level of leadership. It's when you stop being an individual contributor or even a small team lead. You are no longer an individual contributor at all. You're management, right? You have arrived. I had a really good first sergeant, so he took all of his staff out to lunch, and we bought us all the book by Marshall Goldsmith, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, which was on his own time and his own money. We really, really appreciated that. But his point was to help us understand that you were really good. I was a great sergeant, I was really good at my individual job, at leading small teams, in small numbers, because that's always part of being a Marine. But he was telling me it's not going to be enough anymore. And I don't think enough people hear that. It's almost like we're set up to fail instead of grow when we reach new levels of leadership and new levels in our company and our organization, because no one's made it very clear that you've done great. This is not a punishment. This is a promotion, but your reward is also going to be a lot of growth if you want to succeed. So how can we help set people up to succeed on new levels?
When we first start working with a leader, invariably, we will use an assessment. Usually and almost always, that's called a 360-degree assessment, where we're getting feedback, or we're getting feedback for that person we're coaching from their boss, from their direct reports, from their peers, sometimes from their spouse or significant other if they're very courageous, from customers, but letting them understand the influence they're having on those around them. This is very powerful, and people are so grateful for the chance to become truly self-aware. There's this basic unfairness about human interaction, and it's that I judge others based on their behavior, and I judge myself based on my intent. Others, at that very same moment that I'm judging myself based on my intent, they're judging me based on my behavior. Their interpretations that they take from my behavior is not going to be the same as that which I intended to be. So understanding the influence that I'm really having as opposed to the influence I think I'm having is critical for that leader. So the leader has to become self-aware. Now, one thing that I've noticed happening is there's a real danger point here. It's a high risk, high reward moment. The reward is worth the risk, but the risk is that oftentimes when a leader becomes self-aware, it's like a whole new window to their own reality opens up, and they say, I had no idea I was coming across this way. I had no idea these were my strengths even, let alone I was doing this and it bugged people, or I thought this is what I was saying, but this is what people were hearing. And that's very powerful. It's powerful, and it's an essential first step. But sometimes people don't know when to broaden their scope beyond their self-awareness, and then they become self-absorbed. So as a leader, you have to know the difference between being self-aware and self-absorbed. You can't afford self-absorption as a leader, because you do measure, like as you were talking earlier, as that shift you made into being a staff sergeant, you're measuring success now by other people's accomplishments, not your own. Too many leaders become, and let me use the word political in their leadership, and you can take it within your own context if you wish. But what I mean by that is they use their leadership for self-promotion, not to serve the shared mission. Don't let that be you. Just don't let that be you. Make sure that you have a focus on the mission of the organization and on how you help. You now have, I love even better than the word stewardship. You'll see this. I actually wrote this in the conclusion of our book. We have a book we'd love for you to take a look at. It's called Influence on Purpose, 5 Principles for Leaders to Create Regenerative Cultures. That's going to pop up again, I'm sure, in our conversation. But in the conclusion of our book, one thing I wanted to make sure was crystal clear is that concept of stewardship. Even more than leadership, I love the concept of stewardship. And I live and breathe leadership. It's what I do for a living and have done for decades now. But this idea that stewardship means I have care for these people in helping them accomplish our shared mission. I want to define authority because you're getting more authority now. When you became staff sergeant, you got more authority. My definition for authority is when I receive authority in any context whatsoever, it means that I am authorized to serve. I have authority in my own home as a husband and father. Does that mean I rule over my wife and children? No way. Absolutely no way. That's a formula for misery. But what it does mean is I am authorized to serve my wife and our children in accomplishing their missions in life. My job is to help them be successful in life. That's my stewardship. That's how I see myself as a husband and a father. That's how I see myself as a leader. That's how I see myself as an executive coach, is I have stewardship for the people I serve to help them to become successful, even more successful at accomplishing their missions, whatever they may be. So understand that first and foremost. As you become a leader, understand that you're having influence on others, and you need to understand that the influence you thought you were having is not the influence you're actually having. We just don't see ourselves through the same lens as others do. So we take that time to be able to open up that view so that people can see themselves through that lens of multiple perspectives as opposed to just their own.
And key to making sure that self-awareness doesn't slip into self-absorbed would be to appreciate other people's perspectives too. Why are you doing what you're doing? So having empathy for the people you are serving, that you are now authorized to serve.
So step 1, self-awareness. We just talked about that. Step 2, empathy. Understand that the people who report to you or any of your stakeholders, we'll talk about stakeholders in a little bit and define it, but the people who report to you specifically, their job doesn't begin and end with you. Odds are they had a leader before you and they're going to have a leader after you, and you're just part of that journey for them. So understand what that feels like. Also make sure that you're not responding with just your own experiences and your own opinions. I love people hear me quote Stephen Covey a lot, along with other authors that I admire and have learned so much from. I love the idea of seek first to understand and then to be understood. One of the things that you should do, there's a book called You're in Charge, Now What? By an author named Neff. And it gives you really good guidance. It's really written for CEOs or C-level executives. There's a concept that I teach in there is strategically go about taking your first whatever period of time. It might be 100 days, but based on scope, it might be 30 days. It might be 2 weeks. But ask a few questions. Listen and learn from the people that you're going to be leading and the others that you're going to be serving, so that when you do come up with your strategy, it fits the needs of the organization and it serves the shared mission that you have. So having that empathy, that ability to understand your role is not the be-all end-all in someone else's life. You're just a co-worker with a very specific stewardship, and you've been granted authority to accomplish certain things. Understand the perspectives of others, and then also understand there's a significant effect on whether your leadership creates a degenerative culture or a regenerative culture. I want every leader to understand 2 things, that their job is to build trust and their job is to create culture. Now, the interesting is you're affecting trust, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, and you're affecting culture, whether you like it or not, or whether you know it or not. So, influence on purpose, the name of our business, right, is influence those things in alignment with your mission, and do it not accidentally. Do it with your end in mind. Goes to the third thing, doesn't it?
Yes. So thinking strategically.
So what does it mean? I just talked a little bit about understanding your stakeholders and understanding what it means to think strategically. So the first thing, to repeat and kind of keep us oriented, was to make sure that we are self-aware. We just talked about having empathy. Learning to think strategically is a different way of thinking as you become a leader. And especially, this, by the way, is going to change. Let's say that right now you've just become a supervisor or maybe a manager. As your career grows, it might be that you become a director and a VP. Maybe someday you're a C-level executive in a company. That might be your path. If it is, your level of strategic thinking is going to change every time you make one of these transitions. Because by definition, at least my definition, and I am an expert at this. So based on this definition, thinking strategically means at least two things. It means thinking across a new set of stakeholders if you're doing a job. When you first become a leader, you are a stakeholder. By the way, if you're thinking, stakeholders are the people your mission is designed to serve. So a stakeholder is going to be anyone who has a stake in the outcomes that you're creating. Those who report directly to you, your peer, those who you report to, maybe including the owners of the organization or the investors of the organization that you serve, certainly your customers and consumers, your vendors or business partners, that's kind of a bigger category, and even the community in which you live and work. Those are your stakeholders. And as you grow in your career, you will see those stakeholders differently. I get to work with people who have just become maybe a director level, manager level leader, but I also work a whole lot and mostly with people who have become VP or C-level leaders, presidents, CEOs, CFOs, people who work at that level, and helping them understand the scope of strategic thinking early on is an important part of that. So part of it is understanding your stakeholders. I said two parts and I just expounded on the one, probably more than necessary, but there you have it. And then the other is, so the first is understanding the scope of your influence. And then the second is understanding how things play out over time. 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what will be the likely outcomes of the decisions I'm making today for me and for all my stakeholders? So that's what it means to understand your influence and to think strategically. So anticipating those outcomes, whether they have a good effect or a bad effect. And understand again, what we just talked about is that all the while you are creating culture.
And I think people misunderstand the point of a mission statement. And does your company have a mission statement? Is it just pretty words? They don't understand that this is actually the roadmap for how you interact with all of your stakeholders for the future. I worked with a young man who was a manager, not C-suite level, but was looking forward and trying to think this way. And he asked me a question, what do we owe? This is a couple of years back, and inflation was really ticking up. And they had employees in a couple different states. And he was asking about concerns that their pay package, their compensation might not be keeping up anymore. And he asked me, what do we owe our employees as far as a living wage? What does that mean? What do we owe them? My first question was, what does your mission statement say about how you're going to treat your employees? What is your company's policy? Not about necessarily pay, but what kind of relationship is it going to have with your stakeholders, including your employees? And he had no idea. The mission statement was just words on a page. You can't think strategically if you don't know these things. You can't have leaders who are forward-looking if they don't understand where they're going, who they're serving, and what is the point of what you're doing for your stakeholders, including your employees who are also stakeholders. So if for higher up and for the lower level, he wasn't, like I said, wasn't C-suite, but he directly reported to a C-suite, and he's trying to carry these concerns up in an appropriate manner for the people he represented as a manager. He had this stewardship. So having this ability to think strategically on several levels down is more important than I think a lot of people realize.
So an extension then of their mission should have been, and to have a clear mission statement and a strategy that included a compensation philosophy and a compensation strategy, right? So those are, as you look at the book Influence on Purpose, some of the first things we talk about are understanding what are the core principles you build a business on, what are your core values that align with those principles, how is your vision an extension of those values, and then is your mission based on your vision for who you want to become or what you're looking to accomplish as a company. What's your mission? Who do you serve, and what do they get from this relationship that they have with you? All of that is the foundation for a good strategy that helps know that you're not neglecting any one of your stakeholders.
Right.
So strategy sounds like Boy, this might date me, and that's okay. I'm old, I get it. But I don't know if you see this anymore. There used to be a circus act where they would spin plates, right? They'd have a clown or an acrobat or somebody put a plate on a stick and just spin the plate. Okay, that's interesting, but so what? But they'd get about, I don't know, 8 or 10 plates spinning and keep all the plates spinning at the same time, and it was something to see, right? So think of all those plates spinning as a stakeholder. You don't get to say, you'll hear people say, well, our mission is to serve the customer is king. Okay, well, if you serve the customer but you neglect your employees, your capacity to serve the customer is going to be diluted or denigrated over time. So that doesn't work. Well, then we can say, well, our mission is just to serve our employees. Our employees are the king and nobody else matters, right? That's nice if you're a country club, but chances are you have to earn a living here. So that ability to meet multiple stakeholder expectations over time is really what thinking strategically is all about.
All right, so developing self-awareness, empathy, learning to think strategically as we define it. Sorry, that's what you're stuck with. What's next?
Well, if you think about that, one of the things that we see a lot, and we actually have a video we did just recently about the difference between creating a culture of responsibility, accountability, and ownership, and how those really build one to the next. And really, as a manager, a big part of your role or a leader is to create a culture of accountability. And that just means to be able to, we've talked a lot about leadership, and we have another video that talks about the juxtaposition and the interactions of both leadership and management. Here I want to talk very specifically about management and that ability to create a culture of accountability. I love another author that I really have learned a lot from is Jim Collins in his book. There was a book he wrote, Built to Last, very good. And then he came out years later with the book, Good to Great. How do you go from a good to a great organization? How do you go from being a good to a great leader is also a good question. Almost everybody we work with is a good leader. Mm-hmm. If they were a bad leader, they'd probably already be gone and we would never have the opportunity to even meet them, let alone work with them. We work with great leaders who want to be even better. We work with successful people growing in their success. So in this idea of good to great, one of the things that Jim Collins talks about is this: a leader who's not a very good leader will look through his window at all of his team and say, see, it's their fault. This person was slow on getting deadlines. This person doesn't know their job very well. This person, and he'll just find ways to place blame on why things went poorly. Mm-hmm. And when things go really well, that not so great leader is going to look in the mirror and say, I did a great job of leading. Look at me. Look at this great work I just did. Right? And so they'll take all the credit. The inverse is true of a great leader. A great leader, if something goes wrong, they look in the mirror. What could I have done differently? What could I have done that would have helped in my stewardship to help us accomplish our mission? What could I have done differently? What do I learn from this? What do I learn from this as a leader that helps me lead more effectively in the future?
So to start, you have to have personal accountability.
Yeah,
before you can make team accountability.
Yeah, in the Marines, I think you would have called that an after-action review. Right?
Yeah.
So then, but when things go well, they're very quick to give credit to their team. Now, think about this for just a second. It sounds like, okay, one person's self-centered and another person's just a nice person. Okay. That's probably fair, but don't stop your thinking there. Thinking about it strategically, kind of how does accountability spring from good strategy? If I want to continue being successful, which set of interactions is going to do a better job of assuring future success and growth for the company? Keeping credit for myself and robbing others of it is going to cause problems like turnover, poor motivation, maybe even submarining, where people actually become actively disengaged in the work. Where if I'm trying so hard to make myself look good all the time, who takes it upon themselves to make me look bad all the time? If that's my team, they're going to succeed. I can't stop it, right? Because at the very least, it's going to cause turnover and disengagement, at the least. So that's just a dumb strategy. A good strategy, a smart, well-informed strategy is, how do I improve as a leader? How do I give credit whenever I get the chance? Because, and again, I'm not pumping people up by blowing smoke. I have to be in tune enough to recognize their strengths and build on their strengths and help them develop those strengths so that they're constantly growing and getting better. I'm creating a regenerative culture as opposed to the other who created a degenerative culture. That's just good strategy. So to start out with, creating that culture of accountability is accepting accountability as a leader and knowing what that does for me. Next is, how do I manage well? There's some, you've probably heard this if you've been in any kind of an introductory leadership role. This gets oft repeated because it's so fundamental. Be very good at making clear assignments. Make sure the mission is clear, people understand the outcome we're going for, and then within people's scope of responsibility, help them to have a clear understanding of who does what by when. Who does what by when is not one question. It's three questions that deserves three separate answers. Who is an individual? It's not a group. If you make an assignment, you make that assignment to an individual. If I've made an assignment, I don't want to hear later, oh, he didn't do his job. It's like, no, the assignment was made to you. Why didn't it happen? Let's talk about that, and let's work on getting better results in the future, right? Who is the individual? Does what? Be very specific. What does success look like? So be very specific. What exactly is success going to look like? And then make sure that's a clear vision for everyone. How will that success be measured? Make a SMART goal. We won't talk about SMART goals here. You probably know about it, or maybe we'll talk about, or contact us on our website and we'll talk about those too. But make sure the goal is clear. And by when, here's how you wrap up making sure it's an effective goal is, do we have a very clear deadline? ASAP doesn't count here. Okay, I'll get it done as soon as possible. I don't know what that means. And by the way, neither do you.
Right.
Right.
And it will probably mean two different things to two different people.
Yep, exactly right. So very specifically, what's the deadline? A date and a time, right? And so that's the who does what by when. Specificity matters. And then the next is, what's our follow-up strategy? Here's where the rubber meets the road. I have measured both making assignments and follow-up in terms of measuring accountability in different companies early in our interactions. And I have found over and over that no matter if you really are great at it or you're just the pits at it and you do it very poorly, pretty much everyone I've ever measured has been better at making assignments than they are at follow-up and follow-up strategies. There's a reason for that. Making assignments is kind of more straightforward and more comfortable. There's really not a lot of conflict in that. If my manager says, hey, would you do this assignment, and it's my job to do that assignment, what am I going to do? I probably don't have a lot of kick about that. And it's not uncomfortable for my manager. The follow-up strategy, when we don't do that well, that gets avoided because now I'm dealing with a conflict maybe. Someone let me down. Someone didn't do what they said they were going to do. Maybe it's happened 3 times and I'm fed up with it, So upfront, having an agreed upon follow-up strategy is critical. Fix that, right? So knowing that follow-up strategy ahead of time alleviates a lot of the conflict or confrontation feeling that you might have if you don't already have that agreed upon. So that's why that gets avoided, is because it feels like conflict. Now, just a really quick tip for you is, the number one reason CEOs fail is conflict avoidance. Chances are, if you've become CEO of a company, you're smart, you're hardworking, you know the business, you've got a track record. But at that level of intensity, you might start to avoid conflict with a key customer, another executive who's got a strong personality, whoever it might be. So setting up a clear follow-up strategy helps to alleviate this conflict that could happen if you didn't do it that way.
All right. And finally, we've done 4. The last one, I like to think of this as the Charlie Brown one. Don't be wishy-washy.
Charlie Brown?
Charlie Brown. And I love Charlie Brown.
Don't be that.
Don't be wishy-washy.
Okay. So the Charlie Brown method, the opposite of Charlie Brown method, is be decisive. Right? People are looking for, you are in a position to be decisive. Please understand that doesn't mean be controlling.
Right. Don't be bossy.
Yeah.
Not the same thing.
It's not about you having all the answers and making all the decisions. It's about you coming to decisions and knowing how to do that in different circumstances. So in that way, understand that there are at least 4 different types. Technically, there's 5. There's vote, meaning the majority rules. Second, there's a command decision, meaning one person makes that decision and it just gets pushed down. There are times when that's appropriate. The next is a consensus decision. That means we're all going to talk about it till we come to an agreement on what that decision should be. And the fourth is a consult decision, meaning a person or a very small group, but let's say an individual has responsibility to make a decision, but they need to consult with others to get the data and the information they need to make an intelligent and informed decision. So those are the four what I would call proactive types of decisions that are made. Understanding in what circumstances those are made is a critical role of the leader. Now, what's the fifth? So very quickly, fifth is deciding not to decide. It's failing to decide. That's called the abdication of decision making. So that's a decision in and of itself. You didn't make a decision. The world rolls on. Stuff happens anyway, and you become a victim of circumstances rather than an actor in your own play, right, or in your own movie. So those are the five. Let's go backwards now to the vote. Vote. Now, when you think about this in terms of how major political decisions get made, this is going to seem very counterintuitive. Sorry, I can't fix that. That's not this conversation. But a vote is really a type of decision when the outcome's not very important in your business setting, right? It's just quick. It's efficient. So what's a vote decision? There's 4 or 5 of us that want to, go out to lunch and continue a conversation. Where do you want to go for lunch? I don't know. I like Italian. I don't know. Or what do you like? What do you like? What do you like is what it often sounds like.
The vultures from
you know
Jungle
what?
Book.
A quick vote. Out of the 4 of us, where do you want to go? Very fast. Okay, 3 of us would like to go to the Italian restaurant, and the fourth person says, yeah, I'm good with Italian, and you go. And the point is that we're having lunch together, not where we go. So sometimes that vote is a way to just keep moving forward. The next is going to be a command decision. When is a command decision? That sounds rough, doesn't it? It sounds awful. A good leader should never make a command decision. Well, that would be the wrong answer.
Yes.
Sometimes we just deal with command decisions because those are decisions that have already been made, already agreed upon. I don't get to decide whether I pay an hourly employee overtime when they've worked past that line of usually 40 hours or however you measure that line for overtime. So it varies some based on by labor. So you don't get to make that decision. It's already made. I don't get to make a decision about whether or not I use fall protection if I'm up on a high lift on a job site. I don't get to make a decision. Had one company that's an ESOP, an employee stock ownership program company, and their culture around that is, I will tell you, incredibly good. Great culture. Here's one of the reasons why. As this company, as a global company, was expanding into other areas, one of the members of the executive team said, you know what, in this country, we don't really have to be an ESOP, and we might save money if we're not. It wasn't a decision, it was just a conversation. And the CEO of the company made it very clear, yeah, we will never make that decision, because this is our culture, and everybody that's a member of this company gets to have ownership in it. That's just who we are. I don't get to make decisions that are at variance or that would erode our vision and mission, or it would be contrary to our values as a company. The third, consensus. Consensus is fun because it seems like the right one for everybody, right? If we did everything in consensus decision, everybody'd be happy all the time. Well, let me tell you, no, it doesn't work that way. There are times when consensus decision is appropriate. And I'll give you an example that I lived through. But let me give you an example that didn't work out so well. We had a client company that learned about decision making and somehow got and by the way, it wasn't my client, so I'm not taking the hit on this one. If it was, I would take the hit because I don't do everything right either. But someone was telling me about someone who had gone through training as a leadership team, and I think it was an executive team, and it included decision making, learning the different types of decisions. And they got it into their heads that consensus, they were going to do everything by consensus. We're going to always have consensus. We're going to do the work, and we're going to always come to a consensus. Well, let me tell you, they sat down and started to have a strategic planning meeting, like an annual 3-day retreat to plan the strategy. They spent almost half an hour trying to decide what color of marker to use on the whiteboard to have this conversation, right? Well, what color should we use? You can't use red because that's kind of like a violent color and it denotes financial losses. Well, you can't use blue because that's like a cold color, and we're not a cold company. And it's blue's just like a boring color. You can't use it. Well, I think they decided to use green. The moral of the story, by the way, is not always use a green marker. The moral of the story is pick up a marker and start writing.
Some decisions should be command decisions, like the marker.
Yeah, who cares? Pick it up, start writing, right? If you're the writer and you have something in mind and you see the red and you think, that's bold, I'm using it, use it, okay? So that's when you don't need a consensus decision. A consensus decision is when you have everybody's opinion matters. The outcome matters deeply to everyone. Every opinion matters, right? And by the way, it matters so much to each person that a negative outcome would have serious effect, right? So if we made this decision, there's a subset of our group who would be disserved in a serious way.
Right.
Right. So that's when you take the time to make a consensus decision.
So a consensus decision is still essentially a command decision, but with lots of input.
Well, a consult decision.
Consult decision.
Yes.
Sorry, a consult decision.
Yeah. So yes, a consult decision is a decision I own as a leader, but I'm not going to make an intelligent decision without other people's input. Being decisive means decide how to decide, knowing which type of decision applies in each circumstance. Every once in a while, it's a good idea to review your culture and say, as we make these routine decisions, how are we making them, and is that the right way? Because that could change. If I have a very new team of people who are not experienced, I might make more command decisions. As that team learns, I better be shifting to more consult decisions, and maybe even some become consensus decisions. And I need to know when that happens. So that's also a part of strategic thinking. As you can see, all of this works together. We've broken it down into 5 steps, but they're 5 steps that make a whole of somebody else's experience of you as a leader and the effect you have on your culture.
All right. So develop self-awareness. Have empathy, learn to think strategically, develop a culture of accountability, starting with you, and learn to make a decision and to know what a decision is appropriate.
A lot of those are the what skills, but the how skill or the why skill even might be genuine. Don't try to be somebody else. Do this in a way that allows you to live your values and be the leader that you want to become.
And if you're in this situation or you're trying to learn something new, you're a new leader, you have a new leader, you want to promote a new leader, we'd love to hear your examples, and we'd love to know if you have something specific you want us to talk about. How would you apply these principles in this situation? Because it's going to look a little different for everybody. And it's so nice to get that more personalized advice. All right. Thanks so much.